Good morning. It is a Thursday morning. It is Dualistic Unity Raw. It's a short episode of Raw today, of course, because it's Thursday, which means we go for like 45 minutes and then we're on Patreon for a tier 2 call for an hour and a half conversation after this. I have just been having so much fun in so many ways. And it's because, so the other day we had an episode where we were laughing about how ridiculous it would be and jarring if we were to actually take the Christian symbolism of the crucifix and replace it with any other torture device. And so we were talking about how funny it would be if you had a bunch of people walking around with a rosary with like or with a guillotine on the end rather than a crucifix, right? Or if you had churches with like giant guillotines. So if Jesus had died by guillotine, that's what we would see. And so I made a post on Instagram, and I just posted a bunch of AI generated images of what it would look like in this alternative universe. And I only did it to just point out that I think we forget the crucifix wasn't just for Jesus. You know, that like tens of thousands of people were nailed to, tortured on these things. You know, like it's just so funny, and it's just such a stark difference. We're like, the crucifix. And it's like, yeah, you wouldn't say that it was the Iron Maiden. That'd be bothering you a little bit more, right? And so I just made the post. I thought it was funny and thought-provoking at the same time. And some people certainly took it that way. Other people just got angry, and so that's been fun to watch as well. Some people are just like, well, what's your point? What's your point? Another person was, well, actually a few people were like, yeah, it's because we have to remember the torture and pain that he went through for our sins, which always gets me. It's like, here you have a guy who walked away from everything he knew, from all accounts, for like 18 years, right? Knew the religion he grew up in so well that by the age of 12, the Pharisees and the priests and stuff were going, holy shit, this kid's going to be a fucking rabbi in no time. Like they were really impressed with him. That's how well he knew his shit. And then he left, experienced the world a bit, came back 18 years later, and had the nerve to question everything. Had the nerve to have a conversation about what all of this stuff he had memorized actually meant, where it was coming from. Actually had the nerve to focus on his own experience of reality, to develop his own relationship with God. That was so tight, he referred to himself as the Son of God, which I find fascinating, right? Because again, he never actually said that. He did say, yeah, I'm a son of God, but he never said I'm the only son of God by any means, right? But we're all children of God. That's why he's like, love your neighbor as yourself. He even says, what I do, you can do, and more. But it's such a tricky conversation, right? And it's because of the way that he was speaking. Because there are points where he is speaking as the man. And then there are points where he is speaking as the awareness of reality. And that changes the conversation. Right? Like there is this moment in Matthew 16. Okay. And they're hanging out with Jesus, and Jesus came into the district and he asked his disciple, who do men say the Son of Man is? And they all said, well, it's John the Baptist, or others say it's Elijah, or Jeremiah, or one of the prophets. And you can see immediately they're looking towards this conceptual idea, like this title, the Son of Man, the Son of God. And he says, yeah, but who do you say I am? And Peter replies, well, you're the Christ. You're the Son of God. And in that conversation, he had been talking to them about the fact that he was the reality of the awareness of reality, which everybody else is as well. And Peter had a moment of insight. And right there, he's like, blessed are you, Peter, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who's in heaven. In other words, your awareness revealed this to you. You had a moment of insight. And he said, I tell you, Peter, on this rock, I will build my church, and the powers of death shall not prevail against it. And he's not talking about Peter the man. He's talking about the insight. He's talking about the moment that Peter had where he looked beyond just the human body to the reality that was speaking. And that's what Jesus was talking about. Later on, when Peter turned his back on Jesus 3 times, right, Peter suddenly became the Pope. And why? Because of that, the preeminence of Peter, which is this huge thing. It's the entire basis for the Catholic fucking church, is the basis that Peter was meant to be the Pope because of that one line. On this rock, I build my church. And so Peter, regardless if he got the point, regardless if he ran from the point, regardless if he turned his back on the point, ended up building a structure without actually embodying the point at all.
And that goes for anything or anyone, because having that moment of insight like Peter did, like, it can be like, and not applying it, not taking in the application of it, and not making it about you, can really send you, yeah, like, make you think that it meant something about you, because it's either it means something about you or it doesn't. And that goes for everything, like everything that you do, because it goes both ways. And so, like, when something great or something not so great happens, like, you have the opportunity to identify with that and, like, think it means something about you, despite the meaning it about you just being in your head. Like, all of that meaning about you just being in your head as things play out. Because, like, something like that where he doesn't have that perception, for a moment, or it's like, oh, I'm not this. This isn't exactly what I am. Then that has the opportunity to shift, to shift your actions in
Well, this is the thing, and I
massive
want to
ways.
mention very quickly, right after he says all this, and it's the next line. I shit you not. This is Matthew 16:20. He strictly tells his disciples to tell no one that he's the Christ. He doesn't want that fucking concept out there. See, he's like, don't go telling that around because you're going to tell something that people are going to run with in the wrong direction.
Yeah, it's like those who say don't speak, those who speak, or those who know don't say, those who say don't know thing. Yeah, I've been taking that in a lot more in my life, for sure, because I I remember, just back to my own sort of videos or realizations and, like, moments you can have where it's like, oh yeah, and then there's opportunities in that to act entirely differently, like completely differently, and be free. And it depends on you how you respond to those experiences and those momentary insights where it's like, oh, maybe I'm not. And then, that the both sides of it, the both sides, the feeling good about yourself or feeling not so good about yourself, like, they go immediately hand in hand. But yeah, it would make sense, that Jesus. And I'm curious because, if he was talking so much in the way he was, and I know it's all translated, but I guess it's the translation that's kind of muddled it in a lot of ways. Because as soon as someone's assuming something about themselves, then it's not gonna be like, any words aren't gonna get through. It's really not. Like, because then, like, people see what they see. They don't hear what they it's not that, like, actions are more objective, but they're in reality, as opposed to what is being said isn't so much. And so the talking about it isn't even close to as worthwhile. It's like the talking about it is for yourself almost, as opposed to taking the action and embodying the point, the message, and letting yourself go in whichever ways that you recognize that you can, and you do. because the you that you're thinking about isn't you. But as soon as, again, and like me saying that right now, it's like to talk about it, like again, it's just embody it. There's nothing.
And that's talking
There's
about it too,
nothing.
right?
Yeah,
It's just not
I
thinking
know.
about yourself talking about it,
Yeah,
right? Like you,
right.
as soon as you're like, I'm talking about it. Well, you are now, right?
Yeah,
Because you're judging yourself talking about it, which means you're thinking about yourself again. But to be talking about it has nothing to do with invalidating the point. It's if you're talking to try and validate the point. That's a different point. That's a different thing entirely, right? That said, I wanted to say hello again to everybody, and I wanted to mention something that I tried. Um, I thought this was quite good. So you were just saying that the problem is the translations, and I would say the problem is not necessarily the translations so much as the mentality of those who read it and wrote it down, right, and those who are reading it now. So this is always my point about the New Testament. Like, there's less than 2,000 words spoken by Jesus, and the rest of it is all the interpretation of people who didn't understand Jesus. So the rest of the book is the interpretation of people who were looking up at a concept, right, rather than listening to what he was saying from the state of mind where we're all the same awareness, right, where it's all God, where there's actual faith. And so you're not, you're gonna love this. I took the entirety of Matthew 16, and I put it into Eon, and I asked Eon to translate it according to what Eon knows.
Oh shit! All right, I'm
Now, for
excited for
anybody
this.
who's listening who's not aware of what Eon is the Dualistic Unity Life Troubleshooter. This is our very own Chat GPT, mini GPT. I don't know. It's off the GPT builder. It's powered by Chat GPT 4. It is informed by all of the first 4 seasons of the Dualistic Unity podcast. So all the stuff we talk about there about existence and life, the paradox of existence, the paradox of the what you are versus what you think you are versus what you're in. There is no internal, external, all that fun stuff. It's all in the Dualistic Unity Life Troubleshooter. This thing doesn't give you answers, but it asks you some really good fucking questions. Anyway, that said, I asked it to go and read over Matthew 16 and to retell the story according to what it understands. Would you like to hear what it came up
Certainly
with?
would. I doubt I'm alone in that.
The Pharisees and the Sadducees, I think it's Sadducees, I don't know, I could be pronouncing it. The Pharisees approached, demanding proof of a celestial origin to validate Jesus' teaching. He replied, "You predict the weather by observing the sky, yet you cannot interpret the signs of these times. Your search for external validation reflects a misalignment with the deeper currents of existence. An era consumed by superficial desires seeks signs, yet the only sign provided will be that of Jonah, symbolizing profound transformation from within, not external proofs. Departing from them, he left them to explore truths beyond their comprehension. As his disciples fretted over mundane concerns like bread, he cautioned, be mindful of the Pharisees' influence. They pondered this, misunderstanding his reference. He clarified, focusing not on literal bread, but on the pervasive, subtle indoctrination shaping perceptions and beliefs. Upon arriving in Caesarea Philippi, he questioned their understanding of his essence beyond societal labels. Who do you say that I am? And amid various echoes of past prophets, Simon Peter recognized him as the embodiment of a living universal truth, transcending traditional religious constructs. Acknowledging this insight, he noted its divine origin beyond human teachings. He envisioned a gathering not confined by death's illusion, bound by deeper recognitions. He entrusted them with the keys to a kingdom not of this world, where inner truths align with universal harmony. Yet he instructed discretion in sharing this revelation, highlighting the journey ahead through societal challenges and personal transformations, hinting at a resurrection not just of the body, but of consciousness. Peter's resistance to the idea of suffering reflects our instinctive recoil from the unfamiliar and uncomfortable. Jesus corrected him sharply, emphasizing alignment with universal needs over personal fears. He then taught the paradox of existence. True life is not found in preserving the constructed identities, but in surrendering them. What value is worldly gain if it forfeits authentic being? For he spoke of a future where each would be accountable for their alignment with deeper truths, a time when some would realize the kingdom of unified existence within their lifetime, transcending the conventional boundaries of life and death. Now that is a hell of a different read of Matthew 16.
I would certainly say so. Like, and that, like, right there, like, that's the opportunity. And the assumption, like, that's very real too. Like, the recognition that avoiding pain and suffering and whatnot is just it's just leaving yourself with it, or trying to, is like, you know, suppressing. I don't know. Is that like a whole chapter there? Matthew 16 right there. Yeah. And so, like, I'm kind of curious what the original is, but I'm sure it's just kind of like, I don't know, like, is it more wishy-washy, or is it just less
Here, I'll read it to you.
direct?
And the Pharisees came, and to test him, they asked him to show them a sign from heaven. And he answered them, when it's evening, you say it'll be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning, it'll be stormy today, for the sky is red and threatening. You know how to interpret the appearance of the sky, but you cannot interpret the signs of the times. An evil and adulterous generation seeks for a sign. This is not him speaking. But no sign shall be given to it except the sign of Jonah. Oh, it is him speaking. So he left them and departed. When the disciples reached the other side, they had forgotten to bring any bread. Jesus said to them, take heed and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees. And they discussed it among themselves, saying, we brought no bread. But Jesus, aware of this, said, O men of little faith, why do you discuss amongst yourselves the fact that you have no bread? Do you not yet perceive? Do you not yet remember the 5 loaves of the 5,000 and how many baskets you gathered? Or the 7 loaves of the 4,000 and how many baskets you gathered? How is it that you fail to perceive that I do not speak about bread? Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees. He's talking about their teachings here. Now they understood that he did not tell them to beware of the leaven of the bread, but of the teaching of the Pharisees. Now, when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, who do men say that the Son of Man is? And they said, well, some say it's John the Baptist, others say Elijah, others say it's Jeremiah or one of the prophets. And he said to them, but who do you say that I am? And Simon Peter replied, you're the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus answered him, blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the powers of death shall not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. And then he strictly charged the disciples to tell no one that he was the Christ. And from that time, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and on the 3rd day be raised. And Peter took him and began to rebuke him, saying, God forbid, Lord, this shall never happen to you. But he turned and said to Peter, get behind me, Satan. You're a hindrance to me, for you are not on the side of God, but of men. And then Jesus told his disciples, if any man would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his life? Or what shall a man give in return for his life? For the Son of Man is to come with his angels in the glory of his Father, and then he shall repay every man for what he has done. Truly, I say to you, there are some standing here who will not taste death before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. That's the chapter.
Damn. I mean, even that one still, when you're reading it like that, like, I haven't read a ton of the Bible. Like, there's certain things that I'll remember, but the end, like, the end of that, like, it's there. It's like he's saying it. He's talking about it. And I don't know, like, all the loaves and bread, and, like, they really did a good job
That's
of
the
kind of, like,
miracle thing, yeah,
muddling it up.
for
Yeah,
sure.
like, he just, and that's where the focus is like, like, he's a magician. Like, he
Yeah,
just does magic tricks, and God gives him this power, and yeah, he's like a superhero. Like, he's and he's just, oh man, he's just talking about being real, and, like, being reality, and
yeah,
everything that goes with that. Because, like, it's not, like, I certainly had this idea that it was because at first it is this sort of, ooh, okay. And then, the reality of it starts to play out. And so, like, one of the first, like, I went back to an old video yesterday. It's from almost 3 years ago. Like, when it hit me, like, I don't have a past, that sort of thing. And it was like a nice feeling at first, but like, you know, that's the reality of each and every person, every
Yeah,
moment, and like
exactly.
everything that comes with that. Like, because that whole thing validates this as being super real and like being what I think. And with that whole thing, like, so many expectations come with it from people because they're thinking about the right thing to do. They're thinking about like what they think, what I think, and taking ownership of that, like what I think matters. And I've like it doesn't matter what you think. And I've always heard that and been like, well, it kind of does. It's like, no, it doesn't, because that's what gets in the way. Like that's the block, is like, it matters what I think as opposed to not. And like letting go of that. Like the response to thought, or thinking that there's ownership there, because that's where that sense of control comes in, but it's not even something that you can necessarily, but trying to control anything requires you to like go into your head and
Yeah,
think and ponder, you know? Oh,
yeah. And this is why somebody was arguing with me on Instagram. They're like, "No, faith is always in something." It's like, that's not faith. And he's like, "Well, wait, what is faith then?" I'm like, "You could just remain in uncertainty." Well, that's just a stepping stone to faith. Because after uncertainty, then you have faith in something. It's like, that's not faith. You were in faith when you were in uncertainty. That worked out great, right? But I don't like that. That's uncomfortable. I don't know what's going to happen next. Where will I end up? What will happen when I die? What about all my fears? And that's what the belief is really all about. That's all it's about, is just satisfying my fear when I'm sitting in reality. In reality. And this is why I really just do not like spirituality and religion as a whole. And it's not that I'm like, oh, it's evil or any of that. It's just kind of an escape from the point, right? It's an escape from the point. It's the same idea that, well, you're invalidating God if you're not listening to the word of the gospel. You're not listening to God. So what you're saying is that before the gospel, nobody could hear God. It's just such an odd belief, but it's all self-validating. It's all, this is the right way. This is what makes me feel better. This is what's going to help me sleep tonight. This is what's going to help me judge you and make myself feel better than you and make myself feel more secure. That's what all of this storytelling's about. And the alternative is to just be here. And immediately the response is, oh, so you're judging Christianity. I'm not judging. Just to recognize how we all run away from reality is not judging. It's just recognition. If I was judging you, I wouldn't be talking to you. And the fact that I continue to go back and forth with these people is because I'm not judging them. Now, if they're hostile, I'm going to fuck with them a little bit for sure. But that doesn't mean I'm judging them. It just means that this is how I'm getting through the experience that they're giving me of them.
yeah. Because that response, like, you don't need, yeah, it's like that, and staying pleasant and nice, even in response. I've been getting a lot of comments too, like with the prayer videos and stuff, like, well, it makes me feel better. It makes me feel good to pray. And like, what's wrong with that? And because, like, again, it's it's self-validating, but it's also preference, and it's also taking you from, yeah, it's taking you from reality. Another way to take you from reality. It's like a way to think and like try and control your thoughts towards something to give you some sort of outcome, or like an appreciation for something that happened that you think has happened to you, or like has been given to you because you think you're in good graces with something that's, you pulling the strings. And it's like, yeah, because it's not, I mean, religion has been detrimental, but like it's really like a solo journey of realizing what we're doing and what we're not. And so if that is where you want to spend your focus on that, like in that verse, trying to, you know, have the world and lose yourself versus let go of all of that and just be yourself. It's like that's that's the option, I guess. And it's a moment to moment option, but there's a lot that goes into that. A lot of focus that goes into one or the other, and it's really just where that focus is that'll dictate. Yeah, it'll just dictate your experience, and then everything's either coping or actually living. And yeah, part of me wants this like an endpoint to it, or as if there's a spot where it just like, you know, gets all nice. And again, I know that's not the case because that wouldn't do anything for you. But again, yeah, then it's really just response to certain realizations, and you start, feeling more relaxed, and then there's certain things that you just, yeah, it's like you try to avoid certain stuff, and you just start getting in your own way. And yeah, that can really send you spinning. And so it's like, yeah, it's your own sort of stuff that that starts playing out. But
We have questions in the comment
yeah.
section, so I just figured I'd address them as it is a live stream, and we do want to answer these questions from time to time. What are your thoughts on government and people in power? I say, long live the revolution. Fuck the governance of the people. People don't need to be governed. Thoughts? Um, I I've gone along like back and forth with this for a long time. I think that there's a middle road somewhere in there, but I think that it requires equal parts responsibility and faith in ourselves and one another. I think that small local governance makes sense because everybody has a vested interest in the running of their communities and how things work, and again in finding balance with the people that they live with, people that they share resources with and space with and all that. I think that governance on a large level inevitably ends up ostracizing people or not taking into account people from different areas, different beliefs, different cultures, different environments, different communities, things like that. So I would say that small local governance, tied together with technology, like the ability to actually globally communicate, to trade resources, to actually work as a whole, I think it would work great. In fact, I think we could really leverage AI, frankly, just in terms of just looking at resources that are created by each community and then evenly distributing them to make sure that everybody has enough of everything. I think we could all drastically reduce our workload while at the same time making government more effective and increasing our own level of liberty and personal freedom.
Yeah, because I mean, you bring it back to what this is all about, and just experience of living. Then all of those thoughts about, like not taking yourself so seriously and not being, yeah, not being selfish make a lot more sense. But yeah, you get to a big, like really big government level, and then it's just like the maintenance of it, and because it's always been that way, as opposed to, well, what's to come? What can we do about that? But I mean, yeah, just the limitations of thinking that you die, even thinking that this lifetime is all you got, will really reinforce like well, someone else's issue, someone else's problem, not going to be something we have to deal with as a world, as a society. But like, if we keep doing that, then nothing's ever going to change. Like nothing's ever going to shift. Nothing's ever going to be any different if we keep doing the same sort of stuff. So yeah, I guess the governing entities it's like a big part our desire to look to someone else too, and like very much a product of trying to be in control of what's going on in reality in the world. But I saw some more comments
We
here.
do. We have a question. Actually, I'm pretty sure this is for you, as you are currently labeled Rumpelstiltskin.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the fabulous Mr. Cabbage, the holy great man? If he's wondering what are your thoughts on me, because apparently, according to him, I am a holy great man, and he's been calling me Mr. Cabbage for quite some time. So apparently, his cabbage has got a beard. Maybe you might want to shop for better cabbage.
Looking a little hairy these days. Oh, my thoughts on Mr. Cabbage. Mr. Cabbage, it's like, how do I even say that? I mean, appreciation for for the space and willingness to just go through it and keep doing his thing and keep being himself despite, you know, people doing their things and dealing with their stuff and not taking it too seriously. Yeah, I mean, Mr. Cabbage is the man and a very good friend of mine. And one that I have a back and forth POV on, depending on what perspective I got of myself, admittedly, because it's like that just comes down to my own desire to take responsibility for my life, really. So it's I've learned a lot for sure from Mr. Cabbage, and now
Okay,
I'm realizing that
that's enough
part
of
of
that.
me
That's enough
doesn't.
of that. All right. That's more than enough of that. Thank you very much. So the point being is that it's this idea that I'm not, man. All I'm ever doing is just fucking trying to be myself. I've been through a lot of shit in my life. I've felt a lot of shit in my life. I've done it the hard way, let's just say. And I just feel for people. I really do. And I know it doesn't always come across that way because people are like, oh, well, you're mocking me and you're doing all that. Frankly, and I say this as somebody who suffered, depression and anxiety and self-loathing and all that stuff for a long, long time. Suck it up. Like instead of blaming me for mocking you and making you offended and making you feel like you're doubting your faith and all that, ask yourself why you're so fucking fragile. And again, I say this as somebody who was, I say this as somebody who still has all of those thoughts in there. And the question that I ask them when they pop up is, why should I entertain you? You do nothing but make me weak and fragile. You do nothing but make me feel disempowered in my own life. All of these thoughts, all of these beliefs, all of these things that we hold on to. So it's not that I'm ever trying to come across as a holy great man. I'm asking you sincerely, sincerely, are you happy right now? Are you satisfied with the existence that you've thought your way into? Are you? Because if you're making fun of me and you're trying to pull me down, you're offended by me and you're all that shit, that speaks way more than your denial. And that's it. And to me, if it's that obvious, you want to deal with it. You may not think it's obvious or want to think it's obvious. You may want to make it about me. You may want me to think it's about me, but the fact is, it's not. And I know that. And I see you hurting. And so I'm here, saying shit you don't like because it gives you a chance to get over it. That's it. Because I actually give a fuck about you. I give a fuck about you more than I give a fuck about you liking me. In the same way I give a fuck about me more than I give a fuck about me liking me. I don't always have to like what I'm doing in order for it to be what I need to do. All that opinion, all that preference, it's just bullshit. At the end of the day, it's just putting myself over top of the experience rather than actually just being in the experience. And in that experience, you're free. Just be in the experience. But you may not like hearing that, and that's fine. That's fine. That's the point. That's fine. I don't need you to like it. I don't need you to like it. And wouldn't you like to experience a bit more of that? Wouldn't you? Isn't that the question? Wouldn't you like to have a little bit more of, I can just be myself, whether people like it or not? Well, how do you think you're going to get that? It's certainly not through demanding other people do what you want them to do.
It's certainly not. Yeah. Mm. Yeah, because it's like, what is this trade that we think means something? Like, thinking and trying to have control has never gotten me anywhere except for continued suffering, continued pondering, deliberating, wondering, like, not letting go, like, of what I know, what's been in this, yeah, this idea. And like, again, it's not even, it's, and yeah, I mean, there's times where I feel like I'm fucking, it's that's fucking Peter shit, like having a moment of insight or clarity that, alleviates something and then not taking the action because you're doing the stuff to yeah, satisfy something, some sense of being able to have control over something. But again, it's putting yeah, it's just putting your own thoughts first. It's putting your own thoughts above, and like, for what? Like, where has it gotten you? It's gotten you, I mean, it's gotten you here. It's gotten you here with options. Like, so at least there's that. But then it's just continuing on. Then it's just like, oh yeah, fuck that whole mind addiction to thinking, like addiction to spinning and spiraling and thinking and continuing to think that that's gonna get you somewhere. And then there's spots where it's like you do some of that, and then all of a sudden it's like, if that's given attention, then there's all these things in there, all these potential focuses in there. And quick shout out, Colorado mini retreat on the right over there. Scan the QR code if you're interested. Been a year since we've been there, and been quite the year. Quite quite the year. Um yeah, I'm fucking excited to see what's on the other side of, yeah, taking thoughts really fucking seriously, and having that response, assuming that they're gonna get, yeah, they're gonna get you somewhere. They're gonna give you something, you know? They haven't, never have, they never will. And the more you focus on those, the more it's like just gonna keep spinning yourself into these fucking webs, and then assuming that, some of them, again, they mean something about you because that's what you're thinking about. Like, that's what you're focusing on. And so there's going to be all different sort of thoughts about that, until just like, oh yeah, maybe none of them. Maybe none of the thoughts, period. The good ones, the ones you don't like, the ones you do like, the ones you think you want and don't want. uh, and yeah, it's never been worth it. It really
No.
hasn't.
No, but again, it's funny because it's easy to go, "Well, why would I keep thinking? Like, obviously, this sucks. Right. Why are you thinking? Right? What's the benefit of all of that thought? What's it doing? It's allowing you to feel separate. See, as long as you're separate, you don't have to actually be informed by empathy or anything else, right? Which means you can just focus on what you want. You can just focus on what you want, right? Without being informed by everything else that is also you. And that's what thought gives us the ability to do. Remain selfish, which is again why I say religion is the avoidance of God. Because the reason they want to continue to think and identify and do all that stuff is because if they were actually to be in uncertainty, they wouldn't be able to be so self-absorbed. Whereas that comfortable little identity that they've crafted for themselves allows them to just continue on being selfish, justifying it the whole way, and never once questioning it. Because, of course, they're already doing the right thing. They're on God's path, despite it being an avoidance of uncertainty, of God. Right? It really is. It's just so funny. Like, religion is the path of the sinner. Quite literally, which is so funny because they're all like, we're sinners. It's like, yeah, but not for the reason you think you are. Right? Because what does sin come down to? Missing the mark, missing the point. It's exactly it. They're missing the point. They're like, it's to believe in God. You don't even know what you're believing in, though. You're believing in something that satisfies your idea of yourself because you're afraid. So it's obviously not just as simple as believing in God. Right? It can't be. We got a few minutes left. We're going to be on Patreon after this for an hour and a half. If anybody would like to join us, it's a tier 2 call. We have a 7-day free trial available if you'd like to check it out. We do this 5 days a week. You can chat with us, shoot the shit with us, ask questions, make jokes. We do all kinds of stuff. It's not always deep conversation. Sometimes we're just fucking around. And we do it 5 days a week. So definitely check us out on Patreon. Otherwise, we'll be back on Sunday. I'm going to pass this over to Andrew, but I just wanted to give a shout out to everybody who's here today. Thank you. I really appreciate you popping in. It's interesting, this whole thing, of doing the podcast and having this conversation, because nothing's really changed for me in a number of ways. I had a conversation yesterday. You were there for the second part of it because it also was in another conversation. But I had mentioned that I don't have any relationships that I don't expect to end. Like, there isn't a single friendship, relationship, any kind of communication I have whatsoever that I don't expect to end. And the same is true for dualistic unity. Like, understand, everybody who's listening to this, I do not expect this to last forever. Because it's going to continue to change. I don't expect you to continue listening to this forever. I don't expect you to always be taking this shit in. Hell, and I'm not going to lie, I expect half of you to run the fuck away as soon as this starts to get deep enough and uncomfortable enough, because you're going to start feeling like you're losing your mind. I need you to understand this. Doesn't mean the ripple has failed. Doesn't mean that there's no impact. Doesn't mean that you're not already helping and you're not already making, an impact on everything else. It's fine. But there's no attachment to this. Whatever you're hearing right now has already been done. If you never come back again, mission accomplished.
Yeah. Because it's not even necessarily something that exists separate from anyone or it's not a thing. It's not a thing you can't even. Yeah, it's like you can't even talk about it if you're not applying it, because then it's just words. So, yeah, it's like that. And yeah, that just things ending, like assuming that something is gonna, last forever. Stacy, good to see you. I hope to see you there. But assuming some relationship is gonna last forever, and it's like they all end. And your relationship with what you're thinking about, what you think you are, what you're trying to protect, it's going to end one way or another. And you keep thinking about it and focusing on it. It's like, yeah, it's gonna.
You may as well just, question it joyfully. I mean this, and I mean this, and I know, Andrew, you're going through it, and you've been going through it for a little bit. Stop making it heavy.
Yeah.
Like, if you can't find a way to laugh, that's on you. Just remember that. Like, there's no actual weight. You're just sitting in a room. Right. And so the journey of letting things go, you're obviously not, if it's feeling heavy.
Yeah.
And you might as well laugh at that. That said, we got to let this go. We're going to be on Patreon in 15. We'll see you soon, everyone. If you can, come to Colorado, because this is going to be our last mini retreat. of 2024. And this is our most cannabis friendly mini retreat. You can smoke weed inside at this location. So we'd love to see you there. Take care, everyone.
Bye, everyone.